The Charlotte Hornets are plus 3.5 on the road against the Pacers, and that's going to be a 7 p.m. Eastern tip-off. Once again, Charlotte's plus 3.5 with the total at 227. And if you want to see which one of these free YouTube picks on my channel that I'm actually betting on personally, there's only one way to do that, and that's to sign up for a membership on my website at brockpage.com. We are currently hitting at 68% in our last 28 NBA tier package picks on brockpage.com. And if you want to see which one of these games is being featured as my NBA tier package pick here today, there's only one way to find out, and that's to sign up for my NBA tier package pick on brockpage.com. And once again, the link for that pick is in the description section below. And despite being the underdog in this one, Charlotte has successfulully covered the number in their last 3 straight, and they also went 7-3 against the spread in their last 10. The Hornets currently lead the NBA in offensive three-point percentage, and they're led by LaMelo Ball, who's dropping just about 20 points a game, along with 7 rebounds, 8 assists. Melo's also drilling nearly 40% of his three-pointers, and speaking of the three ball, Gordon Hayward, he's making nearly 40% of his shots from downtown himself. The Hornets are averaging over 115 points per contest. They're certainly having little problem on the offensive end of the court. Now they're taking on a Pacers squad who may go to work here this evening without their leading scorer, Malcolm Brogdon. Broggy is currently questionable with an Achilles injury. And speaking of injuries, Warren and McConnell, they are both still out. And Jeremy Lamb, he is questionable for tonight as well. Now, offensively, the Pacers have struggled to shoot the long ball as they're currently in the bottom 3 in offensive three-point percentage. Meanwhile, defensively, on the other side of the court, they're in the bottom 10 in guarding the 3 ball as well. Now, when it comes to overall record, the Pacers currently find themselves 6 games below 500. And when it comes to the injury report, once again, Brogdon and Lamb are questionable. Meanwhile, for Charlotte on the other side, Bridges, Washington, and Lewis, they are out. Now, total-wise, Charlotte's currently 60% to the over in all of their contests for the year. Meanwhile, Indiana is 61% to the over at the Gainbridge Fieldhouse. I'm going to lean towards Charlotte plus 3.5 over 227. Next ball game I have for you, it is going to be Knicks versus the Pistons, 7 o'clock Eastern tip-off. New York is minus 6.5, totals 214. Now the Knicks have gotten the W in their last 2 straight, and they also got the W in 4 out of their last 6 ball games. Now the New York Knicks, they've also got themselves a winning record on the road this year, and they currently rank in the top 5 in defensive field goal percentage when traveling. Of course, when it comes to the scoring in this one, Julius Randle's averaging just about 20 points a night, along with double-digit rebounds. Meanwhile, Kemba Walker is drilling 41% of his 3 balls and averages over 14 points a game. Of course, speaking of three-pointers, the Knicks are in the top 5 in the NBA in offensive three-point percentage away from home. They're taking on a Detroit squad here tonight who unfortunately is going to work without a whole bunch of guys. Get a pen and paper because this is a long list. Joseph, Lyles, Magruder, Jackson, Lee, Stewart, Hayes, and Cunningham, they're out. They're all out due to COVID. Meanwhile, Isaiah Livers is questionable with a foot, and Jeremy Grant is out with a thumb. But I'll tell you what, regardless of who ends up playing for Detroit, whether they're stars or in the lineup or not, they're just 5-27 overall for the season. It's a horrible record. And they're also dead last in the NBA in shooting from the field. Now, defensively, on the other end of the court, the Pistons also find themselves dead last in the NBA in defensive field goal percentage as well. And when it comes to the total on this one, the Pistons saw games with Miami, New Orleans, and this very Knicks team fall under the posted number here recently. Meanwhile, the Knicks on the other side, they saw their last 2 straight fall under the total themselves, 6-3 to the under in their last 9. And I'm going to lean toward New York minus 6.5, under 214. Next ball game, it is going to be Clippers versus the Celtics, 7:30 Eastern start time. Boston is minus 6, totals to 11.5. Now both teams are going to, they're going to be extremely shorthanded. Let's go ahead and start with Boston. Cantor, Schroeder, Tatum, Fernando, and Nesmith, they all have the virus. Not going to see them in action. Meanwhile, Smart, Richardson, and Hauser, they are questionable for the Celtics as well. Now, for the Clippers on the other side of things, Batum, George, Jackson, Hartenstein, Scrub, Preston, and Wright, they're all out with the virus or injuries themselves. But keeping that in mind, these Clippers, bench players, second and third teamers, and I don't want to say scrubs, but they're role players. They did successfully cover the point spread in 2 out of their last 3 ball games. Now, Marcus Morris is averaging 14.5 points a night, along with 4 rebounds and a couple assists. We should see him We should see him in action here tonight. And speaking of, Morris is also drilling 40% of his three-pointers. And speaking of 3 balls, Luke Kennard is making 44% of his shots from beyond the arc himself. Now, Los Angeles as a team, they are in the top 10 in the NBA in offensive three-point percentage on the road. They're taking on a Boston team who lost their last 2 straight. And they also posted a record of just 3-7 straight up in their last 10. Boston currently has a losing record against the spread at the Garden. And they're also in the bottom 10 in shooting from the field. Now, total-wise, the Celtics did see contests with Milwaukee, New York, and Golden State here recently get over the line. They're also 9-1 at the over in their last 10 meetings with the Clippers. And speaking of Los Angeles, they saw games with Brooklyn, Utah, and this very Boston team here recently get over the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward the LA Clippers plus 6 over 211.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Hawks versus the Bulls, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Chicago's minus 8, numbers 227.5. Now the Bulls are on a 4-game winning streak, and they also went 8-2 straight up in their last 10. Chicago's currently in the top 3 in the NBA in shooting the 3-ball. And they're also led by Zach LaVine, who's draining 41% of his three-pointers. Now LaVine is also averaging over 26 points a game, along with 5 rebounds and 4 assists. Of course, speaking of points, speaking of scoring, DeMar DeRozan, he's the team's leading points getter with 27 a game along with 5 rebounds. Chicago currently find themselves in the top 3 in the NBA in offensive field goal percentage as well. Very good shooting team are the Bulls. They can certainly, when they're hot, they can knock them through. Now, injury-wise, Ilyasova, Caruso, Bradley, Ball, McKinney, Williams, and Simonovic, they are questionable. They are out. All those players I just mentioned, they are out for Chicago. Meanwhile, for Atlanta on the other side, they're going to be fairly unrecognizable here this evening as Williams, Gallinari, Deng, Wright, Luau-Cabarrot, Collins, Bogdanovich, Herter, Hunter, Okongwu, Johnson, and Cooper, they're all sitting this one out. Not going to see those guys in action. That's incredible. Now, the Hawks have hit a bit of a rough patch here recently as they lost 7 out of their last 10, and they successfully covered the point spread in only 30% of those ball games I just mentioned. The Hawks also have themselves a losing record on the road. When it comes to the total in this one, 3 out of Atlanta's last 4 fell under the posted number. 5-3 to the under in their last 8. Meanwhile, Chicago saw games with Indiana, Cleveland, and Denver here recently fall under the line themselves. I'm going to lean toward Chicago minus 8, under 227.5. Next ball game, it is going to be Lakers versus the Grizzlies, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Memphis is now minus 5.5. Pretty good movement on the line in that one. Totals 226. But as solid as Memphis has been this season, They did lose 3 out of their last 5 ball games, and they're going to have to go to work here this evening without a handful of players. Brooks, Melton, Colbert, Concher, Aldama, and Williams. They are all either injured or have COVID. You're not going to see those guys in action here tonight. Meanwhile, defensively, the Grizzlies have had a tough time defending the 3-ball, as they're currently in the bottom 3 in defensive 3-point percentage. And when it comes to guarding the standard field goal, well, Memphis is also in the bottom 10 in defensive field goal percentage at home as well. Now they're taking on a Laker team who's coming fresh off a victory over Houston, where they actually scored 132 points. And speaking of offense, I mean, the Lakers really haven't had many problems getting on the board here tonight this year. I mean, they're averaging 111 points a game, and they currently rank in the top 3 in the NBA in offensive rebounding away from home. Now, LeBron James is averaging 7 rebounds a game, along with over 27.5 points a night. Meanwhile, Carmelo Anthony's drilling 40% of his three-pointers, and also finds himself scoring 13.5 points a game off the bench. Los Angeles has actually done a pretty nice job of shooting the basketballs. They're currently in the top 10 in offensive field goal percentage. Now, when it comes to the injury report in this one, Rondo, Bazemore, Davis, Nunn, and Reeves, they are either injured or infected. Meanwhile, Ariza and Ellington, they've been listed as questionable as well. Now, total-wise, LA saw their last 3 straight all get over the number. 4-1 to the over in their last 5. Meanwhile, Memphis saw their last 3 straight get over the total themselves. 6-3 to the over in their last 9. I'm going to lean toward the LA Lakers plus 5.5 over 226. Well, this one might have got postponed. I don't know. Anyway, next game. If it didn't get postponed, it could. But anyway, next game, Heat versus the Spurs, 8:30 Eastern tip-off. San Antonio is now minus 6.5. Total is 217. Now, we did see a huge move toward the Spurs as Miami's completely depleted with the virus. That's why, when I practiced my whole deal here, I didn't see that. Like, this is news to me, this postponement. But anyway, Miami's depleted. That mind, though, the Spurs on the other side, they've actually played pretty bad at home this year. And they're going to have to go to work without their leading scorer, DeJounte Murray. As a matter of fact, the Spurs have gotten the W in just 7 out of 17 home games. And they're in the bottom 3 in home points allowed. And when it comes to getting rebounds, the Spurs are also in the bottom 10 in defensive boards at home as well. They're taking on a Miami team who does still have a winning record on the road this season, despite all their absences. And speaking of absences, Haslam, Lowry, Morris, Butler, Opala, and Vincent, they're all out for tonight's contest. Meanwhile, Strus, Cheatham, and Tucker, they've been downgraded to doubtful. Keeping that in mind, though, Tyler Hero, he should still be in action here tonight if they are playing this game, as he's scoring over 20.5 points a game, along with 5 boards and 3 assists. Once again, Hero with over 20.5 points a game. Now, Hero's also been good from beyond the arc. He's draining 41% of his three-pointers. Meanwhile, Duncan Robinson scoring nearly a dozen a game himself, along with 3 boards. And when it comes to the defensive play of the Heat, that's actually, their strength. They're allowing just 103 points a game, and they rank in the top 3 in defensive rebounding. Now, total-wise, oddly enough, Miami saw 3 out of their last 4 ball games get over the posted number. Meanwhile, the Spurs are currently 14-3 to the over in front of their home crowd. I'm going to lean toward Miami plus 6.5 over 217. Next matchup I have for you, it is going to be Thunder versus the Suns, 9 o'clock East. Phoenix is minus 14.5, numbers 219. And despite their recent skid, the Suns still got the W in 7 out of their last 10 ball games. And they're also winning 79% of their contests at home. And speaking of home court, the Suns are currently leading the entire NBA in home offensive field goal percentage. Now, Devin Booker is averaging over 23 points a game, along with 5 boards and 4 assists. Booker is also draining nearly 43% of his 3 balls. Meanwhile, teammate Mikal Bridges, he's making nearly 40% of his 3-pointers himself, along with 12 points a game. Now, I know we talked about offense here, but defensively, Phoenix has been really good there as well, and they're actually limiting their opponents to only 104 points per contest. And the Suns also rank in the top 3 in defensive field goal percentage. Now, they're taking on a Thunder team who scores fewer points per contest on the road than any other team in the association. OKC is also dead last in offensive field goal percentage away from home, and they're making only 29% of their 3-pointers in that same category. Now, when it comes to the COVID list, Favors, Baisley, Pokusevski, Mann, Robinson Earl, and Giddey, they are all questionable for tonight's action. Those guys, I guess, are in health and safety protocols, so they haven't been confirmed out yet, but it looks like things could be dicey for them. Meanwhile, for the Suns on the other side of things, Crowder, Nader, Ayton, and Wainwright, they are out for them. And when it comes to the total in this one, Phoenix saw games with the Lakers, Clippers, and Celtics recently fall under the posted number. Meanwhile, OKC saw contests with the Lakers, Clippers, and Denver recently fall under the total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Phoenix minus 14.5, under 219. Next ball game I have for you, it is going to be Jazz versus the Blazers, 10 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Utah's -7, totals 228.5. Now, the Jazz are currently on a 4-game winning streak, 8-2 straight up in their last 10. Utah's winning 79% of their road games. They're giving up only 102 points per contest when they travel. The Jazz also lead the NBA in defensive rebounding on the road. When it comes to the scoring in this one, Bojan Bogdanovic is scoring 17.5 points per contest. He's making 43% of his shots from beyond the arc. Meanwhile, Rudy Gobert is averaging a league-best 14.9 rebounds a night, as well as scoring 15 points a game. Utah is currently averaging more points per contest than any other team in the NBA. And similar to their ability to rebound defensively, the Jazz currently lead the association in offensive rebounding on the road as well. Now, they're taking on a Portland club who lost 8 out of their last 10 ball games, and they successfully covered the point spread in just 30% of those contests I just mentioned. They also have a bunch of guys who are in quarantine tonight. Zeller, McLemore, Covington, Nurkic, Smith, Blevins, and Watford. They are all in health and safety protocols. And regardless of that, the Blazers are currently 7 games below 500. Now, they played games healthy this year, so definitely struggling. Once again, the Blazers are 7 games below 500. And they rank dead last in the NBA in defending the 3-ball. Now, total-wise, Portland saw 3 out of their last 5 ball games fall under the posted number. Meanwhile, Utah is 9-5 to the under when they travel. I'm going to lean toward Utah -7, under 228.5. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup for the video. It is going to be Mavericks versus the Kings, and that's going to be a 10:30 Eastern start time. Dallas is -2.5, totals 220, but despite being favored in this one by a bucket, the Mavericks still have a bunch of guys who are sitting this one out here due to the virus. Hardaway, Burke, Cauley-Stein, Boban, Kleba, Doncic, and McLaughlin, they are all out in quarantine. And even when Dallas is mostly healthy, they do have a losing record on the road, and they're scoring just 105 points a game away from their home court. Now, they're taking on a Sacramento team who ranks in the top 10 in scoring on average per contest. DeAndre Fox is averaging over 20.5 points a night, along with 3 rebounds and 5 assists. Meanwhile, teammate Harrison Barnes, he's dropping over 17 points a night himself, along with 6 boards and 41% shooting from 3 land. Now, the Sacramento Kings are currently in the top 5 in the NBA in second quarter scoring. So if you're into prop betting, that's normally where they do most of their damage in that second dozen worth of minutes. Now, injury-wise, Len, Mitchell, and Keita are questionable to play here tonight. When it comes to the scoring in this one, Sacramento went 70% to the under in their last 10 meetings with Dallas. They're also 11-8 to the under at the Golden One Center. Meanwhile, the Mavs went 60% to the under in their last 10 themselves. I'm going to lean towards Sacramento plus 2.5, under 220. And with that, guys, now it's time for our quick pick recap. Powered to you by my website at brockpage.com. We are hitting at 68% our last 28 NBA tier package picks. I like Charlotte plus 3.5 over 227. New York Knicks minus 6.5 under 214. LA Clippers plus 6 over 211 and a hook. Chicago minus 8 under 227.5. LA Lakers plus 5.5 over 226. Miami plus 6.5 over 217. Phoenix Suns minus 14.5 under 219. Utah Jazz minus 7 under 228 and a hook. And with my next and final free pick for the video, I'm going to lean towards Sacramento plus 2.5 under 220. With that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on brockpage.com. If you guys do end up getting a membership here today on my website, just keep in mind, you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. So if you do end up getting a membership here today on brockpage.com, you're only going to get access to that content for like 3 days. So you may want to think about waiting until January 1st so you can get your max value for your money. I always tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. Of course, I want as many patrons on that site as possible, but I have to do what's fair. I have to do what's right. And I don't want to see you spend some money and only get 3 days worth of content. I'd rather see you, spend money on the 1st of January and get 31 days worth of picks. So anyway, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on my website. But most importantly, guys, I got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Wednesday to you. Happy hump day to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at brockpage.com.